Erma. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Could you begin by telling us a little bit about who you are?
Okay, my name's Erma Leaphart, hyphen Gooch. I was born and raised in Detroit, and I love my home. I love being here. I think it's an exciting time. I am currently working for the Sierra Club, Michigan chapter, in our Great Lakes program. And the work that I do, I essentially is organizing around Great Lakes issues. So, stormwater runoff, combined sewer overflows, that kind of thing, using green infrastructure as a method to address those, to try to prevent stormwater runoff and sewage overflows. I attended high school at Cass Tech, proud technician. Yes, and undergraduate at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, where I majored in chemistry and communications. Became a Vista volunteer, and then I went to University of Missouri, Kansas City to get a master's in public administration around healthcare and specializing in environmental issues. I'm a mom. I have 2 children. I have a grandson. Very proud of them all, and the joy of my life and all that. I have become, I was also worked for the state of Michigan, where I did primarily human resources work. I worked in the Department of Health and Human Services, Community Health, and then the Department of Labor and Economic Growth. And I will say that working for the state government was a very deliberate choice. You know, my intent was to be a public servant, to work in a capacity to make a difference in people's lives. And following retirement, I was looking for something fun to do, and that's when I began to volunteer with the Sierra Club, which brought me to the work around the Great Lakes. Understanding the threats to the Great Lakes, the importance of water, water quality, water accessibility, and that's what brings me here today.
Thank you. So today we're going to be primarily talking about issues related to water, especially from a security lens, trying to understand the notion of water insecurity. What do you associate with issues of water security?
What I know is that worldwide, that there are a number of places that are currently experiencing water insecurity. That's mostly due to drought conditions, often related to climate change, and that there are people who are suffering tremendously because they do not have either access to water at all or access to clean water. And we think often when we talk about that we're referencing developing countries that have limited resources. And in many cases that's true. But there are also countries and places that are developed, that are examples. London, is an example of a place that's experiencing water issues. Cape Town, South Africa, water issues. Places in India. It's a worldwide issue with water and people's relationship to or lack of access to it. So it's concerning. And I feel very fortunate being here in the Great Lakes region that we have access to a sizable amount, 1/5 of the world's fresh surface water. But yet, the water insecurity issue is here too, right? We have, because there's a cost to taking care of this water, to getting access to it. It isn't, water is free itself, but it isn't free when it comes to your home. There's a cost to bring it to your home, to your business. And that cost can be, in many cases, is expensive.
Tell us a little bit about how you see this in the context of Detroit and Southeast Michigan.
So I think, again, we're very fortunate because we're in the Great Lakes region. We have, 1/5, 20% of the world's fresh surface water. And then when you also consider that we have groundwater as well, we don't think about because we don't need to. I think there are people here who have wells. There are people in Michigan not Southeast Michigan, but in Michigan, who access groundwater for their drinking water. But in Southeast Michigan, we're pretty much all accessing surface water, right? So we're pumping it from Detroit River or Lake Huron or, one of the water bodies. So because we have that volume of really good, clean water for the most part, you would think that we don't have, accessibility or security issues. But again, in order to, well, in the 70s, after the Cuyahoga River caught fire, for maybe the third time or so, the federal government passed the Clean Water Act. This is unacceptable. We are polluting our waterways to the point where they're catching fire. And so the Clean Water Act then required municipal water systems to stop dumping sewage, combined sewer overflows, into the water. I didn't realize until recently that New York City did not have a water treatment plant until, I don't know, maybe 60 years ago, fairly recent. All of their sewage, flush, wash your clothes, all of that was going into the Hudson River. That's just how much we disrespected our water. So with the Clean Water Act, then came rules that said, this cannot be. You must treat the water, you must treat your sewage before you discharge it into your water bodies. But those Detroit has the largest wastewater treatment plant, or one of the largest. I think it is the largest in the country, and possibly one of the largest in the world, right? And so that's wonderful for us because we're not putting the sewage, right? We're cleaning up the discharge, but there's a cost to that infrastructure. And then, after 25 years, you're now replacing and repairing, and there's a cost to that. So the water itself is free, but the cost of the infrastructure, the pipes and the pumps and the plants and the system itself, there is a cost. And you want that. I mean, you want to protect your water quality. So we want and need the infrastructure. But again, there's a cost. Southeast Michigan, Detroit particularly, we unfortunately, because of disinvestment, the auto industry, we have at least two of our big three auto industries that have filed bankruptcy in the last several years, and all the cycles with the auto industry. We have a sizable number of people who once would have been employed at an auto plant, right, receiving middle-class income, and those jobs are gone. But those jobs are gone through automation, change in market demand, and so I think to some extent maybe we didn't prepare as well as we could or should have for that downfall in our industry. And then population shifts occurred. So we have a sizable population in Detroit, maybe 30%, who are experiencing poverty, right? There's lack of skill. We have an educational system that to some extent has failed people. We've had drug issues, with an influx of cocaine or crack cocaine. So we've had issues that are kind of driven. And then we have the racial context where there were, white flight, black middle class left. So disinvestment, lack of population movement. So there are many people who cannot afford to pay for the water. My understanding from reading recent news articles is whereas the number was huge, I don't know, was it 30,000 or so, 25 or I don't remember the exact number, but let's say 20,000. A couple of years ago during bankruptcy, there was a push to balance the books. And so, people were told, you have to pay your water bill or we're going to shut it off. And there were a large number of shut-off notices that were sent out. My understanding as of today, our current report is that number is down to about 5,000. I don't have a report on it, right? So I don't know. We don't know, what does that mean? Is it that there are people who no longer have water service? There's 5,000 who were recently shut off, but we have another 5,000 perhaps that don't have water. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think that there are groups looking at that and trying to answer that question. But it is still, it appears to be some improvement in that condition, that we have fewer people who are experiencing water shutoffs. My understanding is our unemployment rate is a little better. Again, so if people are working, more likely to be able to, or working at a higher skilled position, higher paid position, then perhaps better able to pay their utility bills, including water. So, it's a complicated, it's very complicated. I think for me, you have to look at poverty as a big, huge problem, because if I'm at a poverty income level, I'm struggling with my water bill, my heat bill, my rent. I probably don't have a car. If I have a car, I'm not paying, I'm struggling paying car insurance. My struggle, if I have any kind of medical condition, I'm struggling with my medications, potentially. Everything's a struggle. So I want to see personally as a solution, that poverty be the thing that be addressed, to elevate, all of those, to try to address all of those issues, including water and security. That to me would be the golden, the pearl, the thing to really seek and try to achieve.
Excuse me. I like how you obviously showed how this is a complex, really interconnected problem, which it is. And it is, of course, connected to income, it is connected to poverty. I also find, however, that often the notion of poverty is treated as this big picture problem, and so a lot of administrators often say, this is a poverty problem, and we are a water department, and we can't fix poverty, so we empathize, but too bad, we're still going to keep on shutting water. And so I wonder how you think about what are our responsibilities, or the responsibilities of the administrators, the politicians, the policymakers, and also the community organizers, in terms of understanding that yes, of course, there is this broader poverty issue, but at the same time, to what extent should it dictate accessibility and affordability of a natural resource which is so vital to human life?
I think we have an obligation, because certainly we don't. I mean, if you don't have water for a day, you're like highly disturbed by it, right? But imagine not having water for a week or a month. So it certainly is something that should be addressed. It definitely should be. I think it should be addressed via water rates, right? That there should be a rate structure that helps to support the ideal of everyone having access to water. Something that was an idea that was, I heard, that was floated, I heard at a meeting, was the possibility, let me just throw this out as something to ponder, that every customer, every water department customer would receive 1,000 gallons, and I'm throwing out a number, but say 1,000 gallons of water every month, free of charge. Every customer, residential, business, industrial, everybody, some amount, say 1,000. And I throw that out knowing that, like in a family of two, my usages are probably around 2,000, a little more than 2,000 gallons for two people. But let's start with 1,000. But then your next 1,000 you pay at a fairly low rate. And I don't know how they calculate it, so I'm going to throw another hypothetical. Probably doesn't make any sense, but let's say 10 cents a gallon, 2 cents a gallon, something, for that second 2,000 gallons. and then maybe 3 cents per gallon for the next, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the higher you go, the more you use, that cost per gallon increases.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big users, the higher users, who I'm sure would say, well, wait a minute, I use a lot of water and I'm paying, well, but you're using the system. And remember, we're saying water's free, but it's the cost of the infrastructure. So if you are taxing using the infrastructure more because you're a big user, more water coming through the pipes, you're using the pipes more, you're sending more back, then that makes a bit of sense to me. That if we're saying the cost is the cost of infrastructure, and again, you're utilizing it more, then you would pay a higher rate. So the payments at the higher rate are basically would help to make, you're paying for the system more. The people at the top are paying more for the system than the people at the bottom. But you have then a structure, a rate structure that's fair to everybody. And it's not based on income, because we know, right, that the department, the administrators have said it is illegal, that to create a water structure based on income. So, many say it's not true. So there's a lot of argument going on, but the argument's been occurring for 10 years plus. And so I'm saying, well, maybe we can do something in the meantime, right, while they fight it out. How do we help people today? And maybe that thing is this other thing that was suggested. That's, again, it's everyone's treated the same. No one's treated different. Everybody gets that first 1,000 free, and then a cheap 2,000, a lower rate for 2. Do you see what I'm saying? So yes, I think there are options. I think there are things we can do. If we could manage to get people in the room to really talk about it, and with open mind. I think now we have people kind of in camps. I'm in this camp or that camp. And we come to the table, but it's not really a discussion. It's more of I'm here to fight for what I want. I respect that, convictions, but I don't see it solving a problem. And for me, again, problem oriented. What can we do to make a difference? What can we do to have an impact? I do believe water the water assistance programs, I think they have a role. I think they've probably helped some people. It appears that way. I'm not in the department. I'm not an administrator, so I don't know for a fact, but it does appear that way. It seems logical to me that people have been helped. If I have a $200 a month water bill and it's just me, I'm pretty sure there's a leak in the house, right? Unless I'm just like opening the faucets and let it run. There's a leak somewhere. That's an excess usage for a single person or even 2 people, right? A $200 water bill. We know the average is 75 to 100. Probably depends on how you conserve. So a water assistance program that says we will come and do a water audit to identify a leak, and if you have a leak, repair that leak, that's going to help somebody. That $200 a month water bill is going to drop to 70 or 75 or something, right? It is going to be less. That helps people, period. There's no argument. That is an assistance program, and it's making a difference. It can make a difference, and it is. So I just wish we can be a little more creative, and think outside the box, and just be creative and kind of break down the barriers of this is what I want and this is what, and just like a big brainstorming session. And just be creative. Bring in the creative types. I don't know, something, right? People with fresh ideas that are not totally, committed to a thought, to a process. That would be my suggestion, but.